Captain Aaron Wells had spent almost a decade patrolling the edges of human space, where the human colonies touched the territories of alien civilizations. His post was the quietest and loneliest on the frontier, a small outpost on Eris 7, a shattered moon with jagged rocks and pale, cold deserts. Despite the isolation, Aaron took pride in his duty. He was a soldier who believed in rules, in discipline, and in keeping the fragile peace between humans and other galactic species. He had seen what war could do, had seen entire colonies destroyed when diplomacy failed, and he had promised himself that he would never let that happen under his watch. The nights were the hardest. The moon had no atmosphere, so the stars burned brighter than anywhere on Earth. Aaron often stood on the observation deck, scanning the horizon with his binocular sensors, feeling the silence pressing against him. Every sound, every creak in the station or rustle in the sand made him alert. He had learned to trust his instincts, and those instincts had saved him more than once. Yet even with all his training, there was a part of him that craved connection. He was surrounded by technology, by the cold hum of generators and blinking lights, but there was no warmth, no laughter, no life. One evening, while patrolling the rugged outskirts of the moon, Aaron's sensors picked up something unusual. It was faint, almost like a heartbeat on the edge of detection, something not on any human or registered alien database. His first thought was a malfunction. Equipment sometimes acted up on this moon, but something in the rhythm of the signal was wrong. It was alive. Curiosity and duty combined to push him forward. He adjusted his visor, activated the scanners again, and followed the signal. The source led him to a crater at the edge of the northern cliffs. Smoke rose gently from its center, curling into the sky like ghostly fingers, and there, amid the wreckage of a small spacecraft, was a figure. She was unlike any human he had ever seen. Her skin was pale blue, almost luminescent in the dim light, and her hair flowed like liquid silver over her shoulders. She was trembling, clearly injured, her clothes torn, and she clutched her side where dark streaks marked blood on her uniform. Aaron froze. His orders were clear. He was not supposed to make contact with alien lifeforms unless they were part of a registered diplomatic exchange. Unauthorized contact could be punished by death. Yet he could not ignore her. No human or Xiran deserved to die alone in the cold. Something about her made the rules feel meaningless in that moment. He approached cautiously, keeping his blaster at the ready but lowered, signaling that he came without aggression. "Are you alive?" he asked quietly, unsure if she would understand him. She looked up, her silver eyes wide and wary. There was fear there, yes, but also intelligence. Slowly she nodded. Aaron could see her lips quiver, and instinctively he moved closer. He pulled a first aid kit from his pack and started checking her injuries. Her breathing was shallow but steady. She winced when he touched her side, and he froze for a moment, wanting to say something reassuring, but no words seemed enough. Over the next few hours, Aaron stabilized her as best as he could. He lifted her onto his transport sled, carrying her carefully back to his outpost. Along the way, she did not speak much, but she watched him with eyes that seemed to study every detail of his face. Aaron felt a strange pull, a mixture of protectiveness and curiosity, unlike anything he had felt before. He reminded himself constantly that he was a soldier, that rules existed for a reason, but every time she looked at him, it was as if those rules faded away. Back at the outpost, Aaron secured a small room for her. He stripped the room of any surveillance equipment, leaving it simple and safe. He treated her injuries with care, wrapping bandages and administering the medications available in the human medical supplies. She winced occasionally but never spoke. Hours passed, and the silence became something heavier than just the absence of sound. He had always been alone, but now the loneliness was pierced by her presence. He could feel it in the air. The tension, the fragility of trust forming between two strangers from entirely different worlds. Days went by, and he began to learn small things about her. Her name was Lyra. She was a scientist, not a soldier, though the uniform she wore suggested otherwise. She had been traveling to a research station when her ship was attacked, forced to crash land on the moon. She spoke little at first, communicating through gestures, but Aaron slowly realized she was intelligent, curious, and gentle. She studied everything around her as if every detail mattered, asking questions with her eyes and watching him intently when he responded. Aaron felt a strange mixture of emotions he had never experienced on patrol before. There was respect for her intelligence, fascination with her difference and a stirring in his chest that made him question everything he had believed about duty. He could not ignore the attraction that grew between them, though he tried to suppress it. Lyra's presence challenged him in ways no enemy ever had. She was vulnerable yet strong, foreign yet somehow familiar. Her eyes seemed to look into him, past his armor and uniform, past the walls he had built around himself. But with that fascination came fear. Aaron was constantly aware of the rules, of the consequences if anyone in the Galactic Command found out he was harboring an alien. He imagined the inspectors arriving, the accusations, the loss of rank, and perhaps even imprisonment. Yet he could not turn her away, not when she depended on him for survival. His mind was a battlefield of desire and duty. Every time he considered reporting her, he felt the weight of betrayal pressing down on him. Every time he touched her injuries or offered comfort, he felt a spark of something dangerous and exhilarating. One night, while the moon's twin moons cast silver light across the outpost, Lyra spoke for the first time, her voice a soft melody in the otherwise silent station. "You are kind human," she whispered. Aaron froze, unsure how to respond. Her voice was not just words. It carried emotion, subtle and deep, as if she were reaching into the part of him that longed for connection. He wanted to tell her he was just doing his duty, that rules mattered more than anything else, but her gaze made that impossible. There was a trust there he had never earned from anyone, not even his fellow soldiers. And then one evening she said words that would haunt him forever. She looked at him with her pale eyes glimmering and whispered, "We'd make beautiful children, human." The words were dangerous, foolish, and utterly irresistible. They were not just about desire, they were about connection, hope, and life. Aaron's heart thumped in his chest. He knew he should step back, that he should remind himself that rules existed to prevent exactly this kind of forbidden attachment. Yet every fiber of his being rebelled. Her words were a seed planted in his soul, one that could not be ignored or erased. From that moment, the days became more complicated. Every gesture, every shared look carried weight. Aaron trained himself to remain vigilant, yet his mind wandered to her constantly. He wondered what her life had been before this, what her people were like, and whether there was a chance, however small, that their worlds could align. The patrols he once walked mechanically now felt heavier, as if each step brought him closer to both hope and danger. He knew he was taking a risk by protecting her, but he could not imagine turning away. Not now. Not after seeing her fight for life. Not after hearing her whisper those words. In those early days, Captain Aaron Wells realized something he had never admitted to himself. The frontier was not just a place of isolation and vigilance. It was a place where destiny could reach across species, across rules, across entire worlds. And for the first time in his disciplined, ordered life, he felt that destiny touching him in the form of a pale, silver-haired Zyran woman, wounded but alive and utterly, dangerously human in the ways that mattered most. Days passed at the outpost, and the quiet tension between Captain Aaron Wells and Lyra slowly began to shift. Lyra's injuries were healing, but she remained cautious and observant. Every movement she made, every glance carried a subtle grace that fascinated Aaron. She was intelligent and curious, but also wary. She had survived the unthinkable, and she knew how fragile life could be on the edges of human space. Aaron couldn't help but admire her strength, even as he worried about the danger she brought into his controlled world. Every interaction between them was charged with unspoken thoughts, and the air seemed to hum with anticipation. Lyra began to trust him, little by little. She started to speak more, her voice soft yet filled with purpose. She told him about her life as a scientist, about the research she had conducted in her home colony, and about her travels across the stars. Aaron listened intently, fascinated by her stories. She spoke of the Zyran people's rituals, their love for music, their poetry, and the ways they celebrated life. The way she described her world was magical, almost dreamlike, and it made Aaron feel as though he was seeing the universe through new eyes. He realized that Lyra was more than just a survivor. She was a bridge to something he had never known, something bigger than orders, patrols, and duty. Aaron, in turn, shared pieces of his life with her, though cautiously. He spoke of his training, his years of patrol, and the things he had seen that left marks on him. He never spoke of fear. Soldiers did not show fear, but he shared the loneliness that came with his job. Lyra listened without judgment, and in her presence he began to feel a strange comfort. It was the first time in years that he didn't feel entirely alone. He began to notice small things about her. The way she tilted her head when curious. The way her fingers traced patterns on the table when she was thinking. The way her eyes seemed to shine with intelligence and kindness. Over time, a routine formed. Aaron would wake before dawn, check the sensors along the perimeter, and ensure that the outpost was secure. Lyra would help where she could, often observing and taking notes, fascinated by the technology and methods humans use to monitor space. She asked countless questions, some simple, some profound, about human behavior and the logic of their patrols. Aaron found himself answering carefully, sometimes realizing that the answers also reflected his own beliefs and values. She challenged him without intending to, simply by being herself. As days turned into weeks, Aaron's feelings grew stronger, though he resisted them constantly. He knew he was treading dangerous ground. The Galactic Command's orders were clear: no contact, no empathy, no compromise. If anyone discovered that he was hiding Lyra, he would face severe punishment. He had sworn an oath, and yet, every time he looked at her, every time she smiled or spoke to him, he felt that oath slipping away. He began to understand that duty was not always as simple as following orders. Sometimes it meant protecting life, even at the cost of everything else. One evening, while the twin moons of Eris 7 bathed the outpost in silver light, Lyra sat by the observation window staring at the stars. She seemed contemplative, almost sad, and Aaron joined her, standing silently for a moment. Finally she spoke. "The stars? They are so much bigger than I imagined," she said softly. "But even among all that light, loneliness can feel heavier than anything." Her words struck Aaron deeply. He had always thought of his patrols as duty, as discipline, as responsibility, but she made him realize that beneath all that was a human longing he had ignored for years. He wanted to comfort her, to tell her that she was not alone, but he held back, unsure if words could ever bridge the distance between their worlds. Their connection deepened in subtle ways. Lyra began to laugh softly at his dry humor, a sound that seemed impossibly fragile in the vast silence of the outpost. Aaron noticed the small things she did, how she carefully arranged her meager belongings, how she examined tools and equipment with keen interest, how she occasionally hummed melodies from her home planet. Each gesture drew him closer. Each moment made the rules seem like distant echoes. He found himself thinking about her constantly, replaying her words, her laughter, her quiet observations. It was a dangerous distraction, but he could not help it. One night, as they worked together on repairing some communication equipment, Lyra accidentally brushed her hand against his. The touch was brief, but it sent a jolt through him. He felt his pulse quicken and struggled to maintain composure. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes meeting his, and for a long moment they simply stared. There was understanding in her gaze, a recognition that what was happening between them was forbidden yet real. Neither spoke immediately, but the air seemed charged with something unspoken, something that neither rules nor fear could contain. Then came the words that would forever change their relationship. Lyra leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper, and said, "We'd make beautiful children, human." Aaron froze, his heart hammering in his chest. Her words were more than just a suggestion or a playful thought. They were a confession, a dream, and a temptation all at once. He knew the implications, the danger of even thinking such thoughts. He reminded himself that she was an alien, that their worlds were not meant to mix, that duty came first. But as he looked into her eyes, full of trust and hope, he realized that something fundamental had shifted between them. After that night, everything changed. Aaron's patrols became harder to focus on. Every decision he made was weighed against his growing attachment to Lyra. He questioned himself constantly. Was he acting out of duty, or was he acting out of desire? Could he continue to follow orders if they meant betraying her? Could he continue to serve the Galactic Command if it required ignoring the humanity, or Xyranness in front of him? The questions haunted him, and he realized that there were no easy answers. Meanwhile, Lyra remained unaware of the depth of his inner conflict. She was cautious but curious, gradually exploring the world around the outpost, always observing, always learning. She taught him small things about her culture, about ways of seeing life that humans often ignored. She spoke of hope, of cooperation, of the beauty that could exist even in the midst of chaos. Aaron listened, absorbing her words, feeling his own worldview expand. Her presence was not only dangerous, It was transformative. She challenged him to think, to feel, to consider what was truly important. Despite the growing bond, fear lingered. Aaron knew that Galactic Command could arrive at any moment, that inspections were inevitable, and that discovery would have consequences. He prepared for it, reinforcing protocols, creating hiding spaces, and planning escape routes. Every precaution reminded him that their relationship was fragile, built on secrecy and trust. Yet he also knew that without her the outpost would feel colder, emptier than ever. She had brought life to a place that had only known silence, and he could not bear to lose that light. In the quiet hours of the night, when the outpost was still and the stars shone like distant lanterns, Aaron often found himself reflecting on the choices he faced. He had always believed in discipline and loyalty, in doing what was right according to orders. Now he realized that right and wrong were not always dictated by regulations. Sometimes doing what was right meant defying authority, protecting the vulnerable, and following the heart. Even when the consequences were unknown, Lyra had become more than a charge, more than a visitor from another world. She had become a part of him, a mirror to his own humanity. As the days passed, the connection between them strengthened, a fragile but undeniable bond. They spoke, laughed, shared stories, and studied each other's worlds. And always beneath it all was the unspoken truth. They were drawn to each other against rules, against orders, and perhaps against reason itself. Aaron knew that the path ahead would be difficult, full of choices that could cost him everything. But he also knew that whatever came, he could no longer ignore the pull he felt toward her, the stirring in his heart that whispered that their meeting was not by chance. For the first time in his life, Captain Aaron Wells was no longer just a soldier on patrol. He was a man awakening to feelings he could not control, facing a choice between desire and duty, and standing at the edge of a story that could change both his life and the life of the Xeran woman who had whispered words he would never forget. In that quiet outpost on a lonely moon at the edge of human space, something new had begun. A connection that was forbidden, dangerous, and beautiful. The days on Eris 7 continued to pass slowly, yet for Captain Aaron Wells each day felt heavier than the last. The bond he shared with Lyra had grown, but with it came an increasing tension, a constant reminder that what he was doing was forbidden. Every patrol, every routine check, every report he filed carried the risk of discovery. The Galactic Command's rules were absolute. No contact, no interference, no attachments to alien life forms outside approved diplomatic channels. Breaking these rules could mean imprisonment, dishonor, or even execution. And yet Aaron found himself thinking of her constantly, analyzing every gesture, every glance, every whispered word. Lyra had become more than a presence in his life. She had become a necessity, a light in the darkness, a part of him he could no longer ignore. Lyra, for her part, seemed equally aware of the dangers, yet she did not retreat. She began to explore the outpost more freely, studying the equipment and asking questions about human technology. Aaron watched her closely, partly out of duty, partly out of fascination. He noticed how her eyes tracked the machinery with intense curiosity, how she seemed to learn quickly, absorbing knowledge at a pace that amazed him. There was intelligence in every movement, a subtle grace in her every gesture, and a quiet confidence that drew him closer despite the rules he had sworn to uphold. One evening, as they worked together on repairing a communications array, Aaron realized how deeply he had become entangled in this forbidden relationship. Lyra handed him a delicate component, her fingers brushing his hand briefly. The contact was brief, but it was enough to send a rush of electricity through him. He looked up, meeting her gaze, and saw something there that made his heart race. Trust, understanding, and something more. He wanted to pull back, to remind himself that she was an alien, that rules existed for a reason, that duty came first. But the pull between them was stronger than logic. Every time he looked at her, he felt the walls around his heart crumble. Despite his internal struggle, Aaron tried to maintain discipline. He followed patrol schedules, monitored the perimeter, and conducted security drills with precision. But the presence of Lyra constantly challenged his focus. He found himself daydreaming about her when he should have been observing sensor readings. He imagined her smiling, imagined the sound of her laughter, imagined her voice whispering soft words to him in the quiet of the night. Each day he became more aware that he was balancing on a knife's edge between desire and duty, and the tension was almost unbearable. Then came the first real test of that balance. One morning, Aaron received an incoming message from Galactic Command, a routine inspection alert. Inspectors would arrive within days to review the outpost's operations, check reports, and ensure compliance with all rules. Aaron's heart sank. If they discovered Lyra, if they found evidence of her presence, the consequences would be catastrophic. He had to act quickly to protect her and to maintain the facade of absolute obedience. Panic and determination collided inside him as he formulated a plan. He moved Lyra to a hidden chamber within the outpost, a space he had prepared for emergencies, shielding her from sensors and cameras. She watched him quietly, her silver eyes calm as though she understood the risk without needing explanation. During those tense days before the inspection, Aaron felt a mix of fear, anger, and helplessness. Every sound outside the walls, every signal from the perimeter, made him tense. He could imagine inspectors storming the outpost at any moment, finding the hidden chamber, seeing her, reporting him, and ending everything. And yet, even in the midst of fear, he found moments of tenderness. He would bring her food, check her supplies, and occasionally, when he thought no one was watching, reach out to brush her hair from her face. These small gestures were dangerous, yet they were irresistible. Aaron realized that protecting her was no longer just about duty. It was about love, about the connection that had grown between them, fragile but undeniable. Lyra noticed the change in him. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the tension between his obligations and his feelings. She did not judge him. Instead, she offered quiet reassurance. One evening, she spoke softly. "You are torn, human. I see it in your eyes." Her voice was not accusatory, only observant. Aaron felt a lump form in his throat. How could he explain that he had never felt this way about anyone before? That for the first time, rules and orders seemed less important than someone's life and presence? He simply nodded, unable to speak. Lyra reached out, her hand brushing his arm, a gesture of comfort that spoke louder than words. As the day of inspection approached, the pressure grew unbearable. Aaron's mind raced with possible scenarios, contingency plans, and worst-case outcomes. He could imagine being court-martialed, stripped of his rank, imprisoned, or worse, and yet he could not imagine giving Lyra up. Every thought of turning her over to command felt like a betrayal so profound it shook him to his core. He realized that the connection he shared with her was stronger than fear, stronger than rules, stronger than logic. It was a bond that demanded action, even at the cost of everything he had worked for. When the inspectors finally arrived, Aaron's nerves were at their peak. They moved efficiently, checking logs, reviewing equipment, asking pointed questions about patrol schedules and anomalies. Aaron answered carefully, masking his anxiety, pretending that everything was normal. Each question felt like a threat. Each glance from the inspectors felt like it could pierce the thin walls of secrecy he had built. Lyra remained hidden, quiet and still, trusting him completely. The weight of that trust pressed heavily on Aaron, reminding him that failure was not an option. By the end of the inspection, the inspectors were satisfied, or at least appeared to be. Aaron felt an overwhelming wave of relief, but it was fleeting. He knew that the next challenge was not external. It was internal. His feelings for Lyra had grown into something undeniable, something that could no longer be contained. He was falling in love with her, despite every rule, every code, every risk. And with that love came a new layer of fear. What if Galactic Command discovered them later? What if war came to the moon? What if he failed to protect her in the future? In the quiet after the inspectors left, Aaron allowed himself a moment of reflection. He realized that his life had changed irreversibly. Lyra had become more than a charge or a responsibility. She had become a companion, a confidant, and a mirror to his own humanity. She had awakened feelings he had long buried under years of duty and discipline. For the first time, he understood that being a soldier was not just about following orders. It was about protecting life, preserving hope, and making choices that honored the heart as much as the rules. Yet, with love came longing and temptation. He noticed the subtle ways Lyra interacted with him, the tilt of her head, the quiet attentiveness, the way her eyes met his when she was curious or thoughtful. Each small interaction was a reminder of the line he was crossing, a line that could destroy him if exposed. He fought against it, reminding himself that rules existed for a reason, that duty was absolute. But the more he resisted, the stronger the pull became. He felt trapped between two impossible demands. the unyielding expectations of duty and the irresistible force of his feelings. Lyra, sensing his struggle, began to mirror his restraint with her own. She never pushed him beyond comfort, never demanded more than he could give, yet her presence was constant, a reminder of what he could not ignore. In quiet moments, she would ask about his childhood, his experiences, his dreams, and in doing so, she reminded him that he was human first, a soldier second. He began to see that her life, her existence, and her dreams mattered just as much as his loyalty to command. Protecting her was not just a choice. It was a moral imperative. By the end of the part, Aaron found himself standing once more on the observation deck, staring at the stars, torn between desire and duty. Lyra's whispered words, "We'd make beautiful children human," echoed in his mind. He knew that the days ahead would bring impossible choices, challenges that would test his loyalty, his courage, and his heart. And yet he also knew that he could no longer ignore what he felt. The frontier was no longer just a place of duty and vigilance. It was a place where love, risk, and hope intertwined, and where every decision carried consequences far beyond his understanding. For the first time in his life, Aaron realized that protecting someone, loving someone, and choosing hope over fear might be the hardest duty of all. And he also knew, deep inside, that he was ready to face whatever came next as long as Lyra was at his side. Days on Era 7 had grown tense and heavy. Captain Aaron Wells had settled into a careful routine, balancing his duties as a soldier with the secret he carried in his heart. Lyra's presence had become a constant in his life, a quiet but powerful force that both challenged and comforted him. Yet, despite all his careful planning and caution, danger was never far away. In the silence of the moon, the universe was always watching, always waiting for mistakes, and Aaron knew that one slip could cost him everything. It began on a night when the twin moons were hidden behind dark clouds, leaving the outpost in near total darkness. Aaron was performing his regular perimeter checks when an alarm suddenly rang out. He ran to the control room, heart pounding, and saw the signal that made his blood run cold. A patrol drone had detected Lyra outside the hidden chamber. The drone's automated sensors were precise and unforgiving. Any anomaly was flagged immediately, and the presence of an unregistered life form triggered the highest alert. Aaron knew that if the command received this alert, inspectors or even military forces could arrive within hours, or even minutes. His first thought was panic. He sprinted to Lyra, finding her already aware of the situation. Her calm, pale blue face betrayed no fear, but her eyes reflected understanding. She trusted him completely, and that trust was both a comfort and a burden. "They will find me," she said softly, her voice steady despite the urgency of the moment. Aaron clenched his jaw. He could not let that happen. He had promised himself he would protect her at all costs, and this was the moment to keep that promise. Aaron acted quickly. He barricaded the hidden chamber with reinforced doors and activated the emergency power shields that masked energy readings. He knew that the patrol drone would continue scanning the area, so he rerouted the sensors and scrambled the location signals to make the chamber appear empty. His hands moved with practiced precision, but his heart raced as if every beat were warning him of the consequences. Every second counted. While Aaron worked, Lyra remained calm, observing him with admiration and quiet respect. She had been through many hardships, but she had never seen someone fight so desperately, not with weapons, but with strategy, intelligence, and sheer determination to protect someone else. Aaron glanced at her briefly, and in that moment their connection deepened further. He realized that it was not just affection he felt for her. It was something more profound. He would risk everything for her life, even if it meant losing his career, his freedom, or his future. Despite their efforts, the situation grew more critical. The patrol drone's scan was more thorough than Aaron had anticipated. It began sending repeated signals back to command, signals that could not be ignored. Aaron realized that time was running out. He needed a plan that went beyond hiding. He needed to act decisively, and he needed Lyra to trust him completely. He explained a rapid escape plan, detailing how they could use the moon's rugged terrain to evade detection, move to an abandoned shuttle bay, and then leave Era 7 entirely. Lyra listened, her eyes unwavering. She nodded once, silently agreeing to follow him no matter what. The night air outside was icy and harsh as they moved. Aaron led Lyra across jagged rocks and deep craters, careful not to trigger any additional sensors. Each step was tense. Every shadow could conceal danger. Every sound could betray their location. He guided her with a protective hand, feeling the weight of responsibility heavier than ever before. For the first time, he realized that love and duty were not opposites. They were intertwined. Protecting her was no longer just about obedience to rules. It was about preserving life, hope, and trust in a universe that often seemed indifferent. They reached the shuttle bay, only to find that it had been partially damaged by recent meteor storms. Aaron quickly assessed the remaining functional shuttles, selecting one that could launch without drawing attention. He and Lyra worked together, repairing minor systems and readying the vessel for takeoff. The tension between them was palpable, yet their focus never wavered. Aaron felt the thrill of danger coursing through him, but it was tempered by the presence of someone he cared for more deeply than he had ever imagined. Lyra's quiet confidence and determination strengthened him, reminding him why he was willing to risk everything. Just as they prepared to board, the alarm system blared again. Backup drones had been deployed, closing in on their location. Aaron knew that their window of opportunity was closing rapidly. He turned to Lyra, seeing fear flicker in her eyes, and whispered, "Trust me. We can make it out together." She nodded, placing her hand in his. That touch sent a surge of courage through him, and he realized that they were more than allies, they were partners, connected by something stronger than fear or rules. The shuttle roared to life, lifting off unevenly at first due to the rough terrain. But Aaron's skill as a pilot allowed him to stabilize the vessel. Below them, the drones circled, scanning for anomalies, but the shields and evasive maneuvers masked their escape. Aaron allowed himself a moment to breathe, glancing at Lyra. She smiled faintly, her hand still resting on his. In that simple gesture, he felt a profound sense of connection and hope. For a brief moment, it was not just a dangerous flight from detection. It was a shared victory, a testament to their trust in each other. Yet, as they moved away from the moon, Aaron knew this was only the beginning. Galactic Command would eventually investigate the missing signals, the damaged drones, and the unusual energy readings. Their freedom was temporary, and the consequences of their actions loomed over them like a dark cloud. Aaron realized that the universe was watching, that each choice had weight, and that protecting Lyra meant navigating not just immediate danger, but an uncertain future filled with impossible decisions. Lyra, sensing the gravity of the situation, finally spoke. "You have risked everything for me," she said, her voice filled with quiet awe. "I do not know how to repay you." Aaron shook his head. "No repayment is needed," he replied. "I did what I had to do, and I could not imagine leaving you behind." His words were honest, raw, and unguarded. For the first time, he admitted not just to action, but to feeling, to attachment, to love. Lyra's eyes glimmered with emotion, and in that moment, they understood the depth of their bond. Despite their narrow escape, the night left Aaron restless. He could not ignore the knowledge that their actions had consequences far beyond Era 7. Every signal, every trace left behind, could lead command to them. Every patrol, every routine inspection could reveal their secret. And yet, he could not regret what he had done. Protecting Lyra had become a moral imperative, a necessity of the heart. He realized that rules and orders were not absolute. Sometimes the right choice was the one that preserved life, trust, and hope. As dawn approached, they found a secluded place on the outskirts of an asteroid field to hide temporarily. Aaron scanned the stars, thinking about the path ahead. He knew that the days to come would demand courage, cunning, and sacrifice. Lyra sat beside him quietly, leaning slightly against his shoulder. Her presence was comforting, grounding, and painfully beautiful. He realized that their journey was far from over, that the universe still had tests in store for them, tests of loyalty, courage, and love. Yet in that quiet moment, Aaron felt a small spark of hope. Against all odds, they had survived the first trial. Against all rules, they had protected each other. And against all logic, they had formed a connection that neither distance nor duty nor danger could break. He understood that the road ahead would be perilous, but he was ready to face it. For the first time in his life, he realized that love and duty were not always in conflict. They could coexist, guiding him through impossible challenges. And so, as the pale light of the distant suns bathed the shuttle and the hidden asteroid field, Aaron held Lyra close, silently vowing to protect her, to fight for her, and to navigate the impossible choices that awaited them. Their bond had been tested and had endured, and he knew that whatever the universe threw at them next, they would face it together. The frontier was no longer just a place of vigilance and isolation. It had become a place of courage, trust, and a love that neither rules nor danger could destroy. Years had passed since Captain Aaron Wells had first found Lyra on the shattered moon of Eris 7. The memory of that night, the crash, the quiet desperation in her eyes, and the whispered words, "We'd make beautiful children human," remained with him like a permanent mark on his soul. Life had changed in ways he had never imagined. He was no longer a soldier patrolling the distant frontiers, no longer a man governed strictly by rules and orders. The frontier had taken a part of him, but it had also taught him lessons about courage, loyalty, and the unexpected power of love. Aaron now lived on a quiet, isolated planet far from the chaos of human and Xeran conflict. He had chosen this life deliberately, seeking distance from the constant watch of the Galactic Command. He knew that if Lyra had survived, she would have faced danger for years, and he had wanted to be ready, to help her if the opportunity ever arose. His home was simple, a small dwelling among rocks and alien flora, but it was safe, and he had spent these years preparing for the possibility of reunion, for the chance to see her again. Even in isolation, the memories of their time together haunted him. He remembered every moment, her pale blue skin glowing under the moon's light, the way she had studied the technology around the outpost with keen curiosity, her soft laughter echoing in the quiet halls, and the trust in her eyes as he had protected her from the patrol drones. He remembered the moment he had to make the impossible choice to flee with her, to risk everything to save her life. That decision had marked the beginning of a life forever shaped by love and consequence. The universe had not been kind to them. Reports of missing patrols, damaged drones, and energy readings eventually reached Galactic Command. Aaron had been forced to go into hiding to protect both himself and Lyra. He assumed she had been captured, perhaps imprisoned, perhaps worse. He spent years imagining what she might have endured, picturing her strength and resilience carrying her through hardships far beyond his own experiences. Every day he hoped she had survived. Every night he wondered if the whispered words he had heard years ago had become reality. One morning, while walking through a crowded alien market in a distant colony, Aaron's life shifted again. He moved through the stalls, observing vendors from countless species selling foods, fabrics, and exotic goods from across the galaxy. The noise and chaos were a sharp contrast to the quiet solitude he had grown accustomed to, yet he felt a strange sense of connection to the life around him. And then, through the crowd, he saw something that stopped him entirely. A child. The child had soft blue skin and striking brown eyes that mirrored Aaron's own. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The child stared at him with a curious, almost uncanny familiarity. His breath caught in his chest as realization struck him like lightning. Could it be? Could this child be the living proof of the words Lyra had whispered all those years ago? His heart raced, and the world around him seemed to fade. The child's gaze held no fear, only curiosity, and Aaron felt a surge of emotion. He had long denied himself, hope, joy, and an overwhelming sense of destiny fulfilled. As he stepped closer, the mother of the child emerged from the crowd. She was veiled, as Xeran women often were in public, but when her eyes met Aaron's, he felt an unmistakable recognition. There was a silent understanding in her gaze, a bond that transcended words and years of separation. She nodded once, subtly, before disappearing into the crowd with the child. Aaron was left standing, stunned, his mind racing. The evidence was undeniable. Lyra had survived. She had lived, and the life she had dreamed of, children who bridged two worlds, was real. For the first time in years, Aaron allowed himself to truly breathe. He realized that the universe, in its chaotic and often cruel ways, had given him a second chance. He had survived. She had survived, and their connection had endured despite distance, time, and danger. The whispered words that had once seemed a fantasy were now a reality, carried in the eyes of the child who had looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and recognition. It was a living proof of love, trust, and hope. The encounter ignited a new sense of purpose in Aaron. He could no longer remain a recluse hiding from the world. He had a responsibility not just to Lyra, if she was alive, but to the child, a new generation that symbolized the possibility of peace and understanding between humans and Zyran. He began to work quietly but diligently, finding ways to bridge the gap between the two species. He used his knowledge of human technology, his understanding of Zyran culture gleaned from Lyra, and his own experiences on the frontier to create opportunities for communication, trade, and education. Every effort was small, yet each step felt like building a future that had once seemed impossible. In his work, Aaron often found himself reflecting on the lessons learned from his time with Lyra. He remembered the moments of trust, the laughter, the quiet talks under the stars, and the dangerous flights to evade detection. He remembered the fear, the tension, and the courage it took to act when no one else would. Those experiences shaped him, guiding his actions and decisions as he navigated this new chapter of life. He had learned that love was not weakness, that compassion could coexist with duty, and that hope could survive even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. Though he had not yet reunited with Lyra in person, Aaron felt her presence in every step he took. The child, a living reminder of their bond, was a constant source of inspiration. Every smile, every laugh, every small gesture of curiosity from the child strengthened his resolve. He realized that life was not about following orders blindly or adhering strictly to rules. It was about protecting what mattered, nurturing what was precious, and finding courage even when the path ahead was uncertain. The experience also taught him patience. He knew that reconnecting fully with Lyra might take time, that the universe would not always make things easy. But he understood that the journey itself, the struggle, the waiting, the hope, was part of the reward. Every day spent preparing, observing, and acting carefully was a step toward a future where love, duty, and peace could coexist. He was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, because he had already faced the impossible once, and he had survived. Aaron often returned to the stars, gazing at the distant constellations and the planets he had once patrolled. He thought about Lyra, about the nights they had shared, about the whispered words that had ignited his heart. He thought about the child, the embodiment of dreams, trust, and life itself, and he felt a sense of connection that spanned not just space but time and species, a reminder that the universe was vast, mysterious, and full of unexpected miracles. In the quiet of his home, Aaron began to write, documenting his experiences, his observations, and the lessons he had learned. He wrote not as a soldier, not as a historian, but as a man who had loved, risked, and hoped. His words were a gift, to the child and to the generations that might follow, a testament to courage, trust, and the enduring power of love. He knew that someday when Lyra returned, they could read these words together, remembering the journey that had brought them to this point. Aaron Wells had changed. The frontier had tested him, war had shaped him, and love had transformed him. He was no longer just a human soldier. He was a man who understood that life's most important battles were not fought with weapons or orders, but with the heart. The universe was unpredictable, often cruel, but it was also capable of beauty and wonder. And in that beauty, Aaron had found what he had longed for: connection, hope, and a love that could survive even the harshest trials. As the market bustled around him and the twin suns bathed the planet in light, Aaron felt a quiet certainty settle in his heart. Lyra was alive. Their child existed, and the future, though uncertain, was filled with possibility. He would find her, he would protect her, and he would ensure that the life they had dreamed of together could flourish. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. He knew that love, courage, and hope could transcend rules, borders, and species, and he was ready to embrace the future, whatever it might hold.